The sun beat down on the village in Tamil Nadu, baking the earth until it cracked. Under the shade of a massive banyan tree, Shiv Nadar sat cross-legged, his fingers tracing precise, geometric lines into the dust with a sharpened stick. He did not look up when the other boys sprinted past, their laughter echoing against the stone walls of the nearby huts. He was mapping a machine that did not yet exist. Beside him lay the remains of a broken radio, its casing pried open with a rusted blade. He ignored the heat and the noise, his eyes fixed on the tangle of wires and magnets inside the device. He pulled a copper coil free, testing the tension between his thumb and forefinger, searching for the rhythm of the current. He tapped the radio's speaker, listening for a ghost of a signal, then returned to the dirt. He erased a line with his palm and redrew it. While the village moved to the slow pace of the day, his mind was already operating at a different frequency, translating the chaotic pulse of the machine into the order of his own design. The village dirt gave way to the sterile, fluorescent hum of the college library. Shiv spent his nights hunched over thick volumes, his eyes tracing technical schematics until the ink began to swim and blur across the page. He ignored the clock. He ignored the silence of the empty aisles. When his vision faltered, he rubbed his temples, took a breath, and turned the page to start again. He was building a foundation, layer by layer, absorbing the language of circuits and logic. Years of this relentless focus compressed into a single, sharp ambition. By the 1970s, he stood in the heart of a bustling Delhi office. The room was a cacophony of clicking keys and the rhythmic, mechanical chatter of teletype machines. He saw the limitations of the machines surrounding him and felt the itch to bypass them entirely. The ambition that burned in Delhi needed a home, and he found it in a cramped, sweltering garage on the edge of the city. Shiv Nadar gathered 5 colleagues, their faces set with the same restless energy that drove him. The space was a graveyard of industrial waste. They spent the first hour hauling away stacks of rusted metal, their hands calloused and stained with grease as they cleared a patch of floor. They pushed the debris into the corners, creating a small, clear island in the middle of the room. On a makeshift table constructed from a wooden crate, they placed a single, primitive circuit board and a soldering iron. Shiv pointed to a blueprint pinned to the wall. "We build the future here," he said, his voice cutting through the stifling heat. The air quickly grew thick with the sharp, metallic tang of ozone and the heavy, acrid smell of burnt solder. They were not just assembling components. They were forcing a new reality into existence, one connection at a time. The prototype was heavy, a dense collection of wires and chips that Shiv Nadar carried like a fragile, beating heart. He walked the streets of Delhi, his boots collecting dust from miles of pavement, moving from one government office to the next. He entered rooms where the air was stagnant and the desks were piled high with paper ledgers. He placed his machine on the polished wood of a bureaucrat's desk, the metal casing cold against the grain. Shiv began to explain the potential, his voice steady, his hands gesturing toward the circuit board. The official did not look at the machine. He looked at the clock on the wall, then back at Shiv with a dismissive smirk. "We have clerks for this," the man said. "Why would we need these expensive toys?" The laughter that followed was dry and sharp, echoing off the high, sterile ceilings. He left each office with the same heavy load, the machine feeling twice as cumbersome as it had when he arrived. Shiv did not leave. He set the machine down on a cluttered table, ignoring the lingering smirks of the officials. He plugged the power cord into a wall socket, the hum of the cooling fan cutting through the silence of the room. He pulled a stack of raw, unorganized data from his bag and laid it beside the keyboard. The lead official leaned back, arms crossed. Shiv began to type. His fingers moved with rhythmic precision, a blur of motion against the keys. The machine responded instantly. A green cursor blinked. Then lines of processed information scrolled across the screen at a speed that defied the room's stagnant pace. A task that required the clerk's days of manual calculation was finished in seconds. The room went dead silent. The official reached out, touching the edge of the monitor as if checking for a trick. The skepticism in his expression dissolved. The official picked up a pen, his hand hesitating before he signed the contract. It was the first victory. Then came the second. The market did not welcome the new player. Established giants saw the rise of HCL and responded with a brutal, calculated move. They slashed prices across the board, driving costs down until the profit margins on hardware vanished. They intended to bleed the company dry, forcing a retreat back to the garage. Shiv Nadar watched the numbers, his focus shifting from the physical assembly of machines to the invisible architecture of code. He saw the trap. He refused to fight a war of attrition on their terms. In a single, decisive motion, he pivoted the company toward software services. While competitors remained chained to the manufacturing floor, Nadar sent his engineers to solve the complex problems of the clients directly. He traded the weight of metal for the speed of logic. The giants were slow, burdened by their own scale, while HCL moved with the precision of a scalpel. They offered solutions, not just parts. HCL surged past them, its growth accelerating. HCL was no longer just a hardware maker. It had become a national titan. The garage was a memory, replaced by the rhythmic pulse of a massive factory floor. Shiv Nadar did not retreat to a glass office. He spent his hours walking the aisles, his presence a constant among the rows of assembly stations. The air here was filled with the sharp scent of ozone and the steady hum of cooling fans. He stopped at a workstation where an engineer struggled. Nadar leaned in, his eyes tracking the flow of the circuit, and pointed to a connection point. The engineer adjusted the solder, and the board flickered to life. It was a small moment, yet it defined his leadership. He knew every component because he had built the first one himself. He moved through the facility, checking the output of the cooling systems and the precision of the assembly lines. He stood on a raised platform, looking out over the expanse of his creation. The sprawling floor was a testament to years of relentless iteration. He had built an empire of circuits, a machine that never stopped, fueled by the same curiosity. The work was no longer just his. It was the heartbeat of a nation. The hum of the factory faded, replaced by the dry, rhythmic rustle of leaves in the wind. Shiv Nadar left the glass and steel world of the city behind, traveling back to the village where the earth was still marked by his childhood sketches. He walked across a patch of barren, sun-baked land, the soil crunching beneath his feet. This was the place where he had once sat under a banyan tree, disassembling radios to find the pulse of the world. Now, the landscape was empty, save for the heat rising in shimmering waves. He stopped at a marked corner, the silence of the countryside a sharp contrast to the roar of the assembly lines. He reached down, his hands brushing away the loose dirt to reveal the foundation line. He picked up a single, heavy brick and pressed it firmly into the earth. It was a simple, deliberate action. There were no teletype machines here, no circuit boards, and no competitors to outmaneuver. He stood back, watching the dust settle around the foundation. This was not an investment in hardware. The future was now a structure rising from the dust. The structure rose from the dust, a sanctuary of stone and glass where the barren earth once lay. Shiv Nadar walked through the quiet halls, his footsteps echoing against the polished floors. The air here did not carry the scent of ozone or the roar of assembly lines. Instead, it held the soft, rhythmic clatter of keyboards. He entered a classroom and stopped at the threshold. Rows of monitors cast a steady, cool glow across the room. A young student sat at a terminal, fingers dancing across the keys, watching lines of code scroll down the screen. The machine flickered, and a command executed perfectly. The student leaned back, a smile breaking across their face. Nadar watched the reflection of the screen in the child's eyes. It was the same spark he had felt decades ago. He moved through the university he had founded, listening to the hum of 1,000 minds engaging with the world. He had spent his life building an empire of circuits, but standing there, he understood the true nature of his work. The hardware was merely a vessel. The real innovation was the capacity of the human mind to create, to solve, and to dream. The legacy was secure, living in the code written by the next generation.